I'm Dan Olsen, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk with you about product strategy and share some advice. My background, I used to be a product leader at Intuit a while ago. I've been a product leader at startups. I've been a founder of a startup as well. But for the past 9 years, I've been consulting to companies in product management to help them improve their products and deliver good product strategies. And since it's very rare to get a group of product leaders together like this, right? It's super rare. It doesn't really happen. I thought this would be an appropriate time to share one of the most closely guarded product management secrets with you guys, if you promise not to share it too broadly. There's actually a product management motto. I don't know if you guys know it or not. It's kind of similar to Spider-Man's motto. Does anyone know Spider-Man's motto? With great power comes great responsibility. The product management motto is similar, but it's just a little different. It's basically, with great responsibility comes no power. And we're all laughing, but we're crying a little bit deep down, aren't we, guys? You know? And as product managers, we're responsible for so many things, right? And as product leaders, one of the things we're responsible for is product strategy. And I just want to start out with a couple of questions. Basically, does your company have a product strategy? Raise your hand if you feel like your company has a product strategy. Yeah. When I talk to non-leader audiences, the number of hands is a lot lower. Let's do the next question. Do you feel good? Raise your hand if you feel good about your company's product strategy. I won't look. I won't see who is. Okay. Cool. Well, when I do this quiz a lot, basically, a lot of people aren't happy with it. And so that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, The Lean Product Playbook. I'm actually going to be giving away 3 copies today. So if you want, just tweet. We're doing raffles for the event also. Just tweet with my handle, and I'll grab 3 of the best tweets and give the books out. But that's why I wrote that book. And so that's why I want to share some advice. And why is it that so few companies feel good about their product strategy? Why do you guys think? It's hard. Yes, it is hard. They don't know what it is. That's right. Anything else? Execution's easier. That's right. Generalized fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay, cool. FUD. All right, cool. I think there are a lot of reasons, and there obviously it's complex, but I think there are 2 main reasons. I think the first is there's a focus on the short term. We have to deliver today's objectives, this week's objectives, this month's objectives, this quarter, if we're lucky to think about the quarter, right? There's just that natural, it's like a black hole. The gravitational pull of the short term and the tactical is there and can dominate everything if you let it. The second reason is a lack of a good framework. Someone said it's hard. They don't necessarily say, hey, I went to business school. It's not like there's some class in product strategy where they say, this is how you do it. This is how everybody does it, right? So those are the 2 main reasons that I see when I work with companies. And so I'm going to try to address those 2 points and give you some tips on how to do it on your own. What is strategy? That's the other thing. Someone says, don't know what it is. What does strategy mean to you? What's your definition of strategy? Yeah. What's worth doing in the long term? Yeah, great. Plan to achieve a vision. All right, cool. One more? Mike Belcito, I know you thought about this one a lot. I'm going to cold call you. I'm still trying to think. All right, cool. Cool. What do we have? What are you trying to accomplish? Why does it matter? Yeah, it's hard. It's a little fuzzy and gray, right? Some of the key points that I think, your plan for how you're going to win. Someone said your plan, or how you're going to get to your vision, for how you're going to win in the marketplace. I think it needs to be informed by competitive analysis. It's not done in a vacuum. It's deliberately about looking at the long term versus the short term. And it's about looking at the big picture. And one of the metaphors that I really love here is big rocks versus sand. Who's heard of big rocks versus sand before, right? Okay, cool. For those of you that haven't heard it, I saw this. It's from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He has someone come up, and they've got like this glass beaker from ChemLab, and he's got like some rocks and some pebbles and some sand. He's like, please fill the beaker. And the first time the person fills the beaker, they put the sand in first. And then they put the pebbles in, and then they try to put the rocks in, but there's just not enough room because the pebbles and the sand have taken up all the room, right? And then he says, do it again. This time, put the big rocks in first. And lo and behold, she puts the big rocks in first, then the pebbles, then the sand, and it all fits. There's no trick going on. It's the same stuff. Why does this matter? The sand is all those little things that come up, right? The meeting, the email, the bug, the customer request. The big rocks are the big strategic things that are important. And this applies, a lot of this is done as far as your life, too, not just at work or product strategy or product roadmaps. The big rocks. And the lesson here is, unless you make room for the big rocks, the sand will overwhelm everything, right? Especially in agile environments. Agile is really good at shipping sand every 2 weeks, right? Every 2 weeks. And in fact, I worked at a startup, and there was one junior developer. He did all the he would crank out like 50 bug fixes. I'm like, you're the Sandman, because he would do I call him the Sandman, right? But again, who's looking out for the big rocks? At the end of the year, if we look back and we haven't done these things, are we going to be regretful? So be mindful of the big rocks. My last point on strategy is my favorite definition is it means saying no, right? It's easy to say yes to everything. You may have, I'm not going to pick on enterprise, well, we'll pick on enterprise sales teams, right? They go out, they talk to a client. It's like, hey, the prospective client goes, is your product going to have feature A? Oh, yeah, it's going to have feature A. Just sign the contract. Oh, yeah. They come back, hey, guys, we got to build feature A. We signed it. They go to the next client. Hey, is it going to have feature B? Oh, yeah. They say yes to everything. That's what they're incentivized to do, right? So that's not strategic. That's the opposite of being strategic. In my book, I have a lot of Steve Jobs quotes. One of the ones I really like is he has one on this topic about focus and saying no. And he says, people think focus means saying yes to the thing you're trying to focus on, but that's not what it means. It means saying no to all the other good ideas that are out there that you could be doing. And his quote is, innovation is saying no to 1,000 things. I modified a little bit to say strategy means saying no, basically, right? So that was the first thing. The second part is the lack of having a good framework. And so that's what I want to address in the last part of my talk and close out with a couple of examples. And I like to tie it in with product market fit. And in my book, I have a framework called the Product Market Fit Pyramid that I want to walk you through real quick. Because a lot of people talk about product market fit, but there isn't a lot of good guidance out there on how to achieve it. And that's basically what my book is, a guide on how to achieve it. And the key framework is the Product Market Fit Pyramid. I like to think of the market as these 2 layers. Basically, it all starts with the target customer. Whose life are you trying to make better? Who are you trying to create value for? And everything builds, like a real pyramid, builds on top of that. The next layer up is, for that customer, what are their underserved needs? And those 2 together form the market. And if you look in a marketing or economics book, it'll say a market is a group of people that share a set of common needs. That's the market. And you don't really control the market. You can target which one you want to go after. What you control is the product decision layers, which are these 3. Your value proposition, which hopefully builds on underserved needs if we're doing a good job, which is, hey, how is our product going to be better or different than the products that are out there and meet their needs better? The next level up is, what's the functionality that's going to convey those customer benefits? And that's where MVP comes in. And then finally, what's the user experience that brings that functionality to life for the user? And product market fit is just, hey, all the decisions and assumptions and execution we're doing in the top 3 layers, how well do they resonate with the market? And in this framework, product strategy lives right here, right? How are we going to be better or different? How are we going to meet those customer needs in a way that's better and different than the other substitutes, even if it's not a direct competitor? All right, so we're going to need to be focusing on customer needs. A lot of times you'll see product roadmaps or product strategies, and they frankly have feature speak in them, right? They're solution-based. And it's really important to focus on the customer problem, the customer need. There's a famous quote about a hole. Well, basically, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole, right? The drill is the solution. The hole is the problem. And so I'm a big proponent of staying in the problem space and thinking about customer needs. Problem space, I kind of alluded this with the hole, but to go more into it, it's basically a customer problem, need, or benefit that the product should address. So if I say, hey, I want to make it easy for people to share photos with their friends, that statement is in the problem space. In contrast, solution space is a specific design or implementation that's meant to address that need. And if the next thing I say is, and by the way, my friend coded an app to do that, that app would be in the solution space. Or if I said, hey, my designer friend did a mock-up for it, that mock-up would be in the solution space. And it's really easy, we live in the solution space, to fall into that trap. And a lot of times you'll see in your Jira stories or on your roadmaps, it's solution feature-centric, right? And you want to focus on benefits, not features. If you find your team focused on solutions and features, a trick to get them to go back is why. You know, in the Jira store, maybe, hey, add a drop-down. Well, why do we want to add the drop-down? Oh, so the user can select their city. Oh, okay, well, let's write it that way. The drop-down might be the best way. There might be a better way, basically. So I want to share an example from Intuit, where I used to work. We've got problem space on the left, solution space on the right. I used to work on Quicken, but one of our other big products is TurboTax. It competes with another software product, TaxCut, which is also in the solution space. And the idea is you want to have clear, tight mapping between problem and solution space. For those of you that use who's used TurboTax here? A few people? Yeah. What does it do for you? What's the benefit that it gives you? Why do you like it? Easy. Self-guided. Quick. File my taxes. Efficient. Convenience. I got these one-word answers. People are being concise. Anything else? Cheap. Right. So I just did that real quick. I got like 8 or 9 different answers. Were they consistent? No, they weren't. Some were kind of consistent, but I got cheap, I got easy, I got self-guided, right? And if I asked everybody, I'd get like probably 100 answers. That's the thing about the problem space. It's very messy. It's hard to make sense of. Let's just forget about it and design stuff and code stuff and launch it, right? That's kind of the thing, right? If I had to come up with a high-level summary, and that's the thing too, it's like an onion, the high-level thing would be like, hey, it helps me do my taxes, helps me prepare my taxes. The other person that really helped me understand this concept at Intuit was Scott Cook, the founder. And what he loved to do when he would have a group of product folks like this, he'd like to quiz them and go, hey, who's the biggest competitor to TurboTax? And we'd all raise our hand, so he'd pick us, and we'd be like, it's TaxCut. He's like, no, you're wrong. It's pen and paper, because more Americans are doing the taxes with pen and paper. So competitors really mean substitutes. How are people getting those needs met today? And at the time, more Americans were doing it that way. Our job as product teams are to like peel that onion. This is too high level to be actionable. So with your team, what are all the different things we can do to help people with their taxes? We can, for example, help them check your taxes. Instead of doing it by paper, computers are great with numbers and math. We can file them. Instead of going to the post office, you can just push a button and file it online. We can maximize your deductions by asking you questions, right? We can reduce your audit risk by analyzing your return. These are just 4 examples, and your goal is to like really flesh out that problem space and come up with what I call a problem space definition. This is kind of the mindset we want to have when we're thinking about our product strategy. You'll notice that these are kind of written from in a kind of similar template. They all start with a verb, an action verb, because they're actually doing something to create value for the user, right? They're also written from the user's perspective. So check, file, maximize, reduce. They're written from the user's perspective, right? Kind of like good user stories. They're not written from the technology perspective or the company perspective. That's a good way to know that if you see it following this template, you're probably more in the problem space, and if you're not, you're probably not. All right, so once we've brainstormed all the possible needs that we could address, we want to basically figure out which ones are we going to try to tackle and be the best at. And this is where I like to apply the Kano model. Who's familiar with the Kano model here? All right, great. So I actually studied this in lean manufacturing before I even went out to business school or Silicon Valley, and I really like applying it. And it also talks about kind of user needs and satisfaction. So let me explain it real quick. On the horizontal axis, we have, hey, how fully does the product meet the need that we're talking about? From not at all to fully met, right? And on the horizontal axis, as a result of how much it meets that need, how much customer satisfaction is created from completely dissatisfied to completely satisfied. If this seems a little complicated, Kano makes it super easy. It breaks everything down into one of 3 categories. The first is performance. This is probably the easiest to understand. More is better. Like the more the product meets this need, the more customer value it creates. Less is worse. Say I was shopping for cars, and there were 2 cars that were pretty similar, but then all of a sudden I realized one car had twice the miles per gallon of the other car. All other things being equal, I would pick that car because miles per gallon is basically a performance benefit. Say we were doing microprocessors. Chip speed would be an example of that, right? So it's like, how are you outperforming the competition, basically? The second one is a must-have. Now, having a must-have doesn't actually make anybody happy. They don't go, yeah, you have the must-have. But if you don't meet it, then they are unhappy. Right? That's the definition of must-have. Must-have is not because the executive or CEO said we must have this feature. It's this definition based on customer input. It's one of the most misused terms. But sticking with cars, say I went into, shopping for a new car, I went to the showroom, I love the way the car looked, I look at the spec sheet on the window, love the specs, then I peek inside and realize, oh, this doesn't have any seatbelts. I wouldn't buy it, because seatbelts are a must-have for a car. I'd be afraid of getting hurt or dying, right? But if car A has 5 seatbelts and car B has 100 seatbelts, I don't say car B is 20 times better. Right? Once I have 1 seatbelt per person, we've flattened out. That's must-haves. The third is delighters. Not having a delighter doesn't cause a problem because people aren't expecting it to be there, but having a delighter can really create a lot of customer value. And not today, but think back to when the first cars came out with GPS navigation. It was a delighter. Right before that, we were all printing out Google Maps or MapQuest. We're getting lost, asking people for directions. And then, GPS came along, you just put in where you're going. It fundamentally changed how you got from point A to point B. But as we know, over time, more and more cars got GPS navigation. Garmin and TomTom came out with their add-on things, and now we all just use our phones. So this is not a static picture, it's dynamic, and the needs and features migrate over time, basically, right? So that today's delighters become tomorrow's performance features becomes, the next time's must-haves, basically. And the rate with which that happens depends on the level of innovation and competition in your space. But what we're going to do to tie it back to product strategy is categorize the needs that we're going after in these 3 categories. And we're going to create a product strategy grid. And there are 4 steps to that. The first step is, I've kept it generic, for your category, 1 per row, list out what are the must-have benefits, what are the performance benefits, what are the delighter benefits. That's step 1, right? And I've kept it generic so you can envision yours. The next step is list a column for each of your key competitors and a column for your product. The next step is you want to rate your competitors. So you want to go through and rate them. And you can just use high, medium, low. If there are numerical things you could do like microprocessor speed or number of seatbelts or things like that, by all means use numbers. But even just using high, medium, low is adequate. And for things like must-have and delighters, you can just use yes or no. Right? So in this scenario, we have competitor A. Of course, both people have the must-haves. Competitor A is the best at this benefit. Competitor B is the best at this benefit. They're both so-so at this benefit, 3. And this one has a delighter, right? This is the backdrop upon which we want to determine our product strategy and figure out how we're going to be better or different. We don't want to launch a Me Too product. We want to have a differentiated product strategy, right? So given this backdrop, we might do basically something like this to figure out where are we going to play offense, where are we going to try to compete and win, right? Back to my thing about the Steve Jobs quote, we can't just go high, 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 high. We're going to win everything, right? And sometimes I do workshops, and some teams can't help themselves. Some teams pick 2 highs, some teams pick 3 highs, some teams pick 4 highs. And it's very telling to see how disciplined and focused they were in their product strategy. So we can't pick everything. So we might, given this backdrop, do something like this. We might say, okay, yeah, of course we're going to have the must-have. We're not going to ignore performance benefit 1, but we're not going to try to be the best at it either. We're going to say no and not worry about performance benefit 2. We're going to let these guys be the best at that. What we're going to focus on is performance benefit 3. We're going to try to be the best there. Maybe we've identified some underserved segment that really values that, or maybe we have some cool technology ideas on how we can deliver better customer value against that, right? And then we have our own idea for a delighter. What matters the most from this framework is what's called your unique differentiators. It's the performance benefits where you plan to be the best and your unique delighters, right? And when you start seeing things through this lens, you start realizing that, wow, there are a lot of successful companies, it's very clear that they've got one performance benefit where they're the best and this delighter. It's kind of like a 1-2 punch. You don't have to have the delighter. You definitely need the performance benefit, but it's a very common pattern that you see. So with that, I want to actually go through 2 examples. Has anyone here used Instagram? Yeah, right? Everyone has. So think back, not today, but when Instagram came out, there were tons of photo sharing apps that were out there, right? And yet they won. What was it about them? Thinking through the Kano model lens, what were their unique differentiators that let them win and dominate that space? Filters. Is filters a solution and feature, or is that a problem or benefit? Right. So now we do the 5 whys. What do filters do? How does it create value for you? Make your photos look good, right? Exactly. So yes, you're both right. That was the benefit. That's the feature that delivered the benefit. Excellent. Yeah. What else? Sync to Facebook, okay. What else? Simple, focused, yeah. Share with community, yeah. I think a lot of them let you share, and I think other ones let you post to Facebook, but from a differentiation standpoint, I'm not sure how much that was. There were 2 other things. There's one that was really important, the performance benefit that they did. How did they outperform the other people? Facebook graph, okay. What else? Speed to post, exactly. Not now. Now we all have instantaneous 4G. Everything's cool. Back then, we had slow phones, slow networking. Literally, it would take a few seconds. And what would happen is you do Instagram, you'd be like, whoa, my photo posted so quickly. What happened? It was noticeably faster that it would post your photo. And the way they did it is they did a hack where instead of waiting for you to push the upload button, they said, 99% of the time, people are going to upload their photo. Let's just start uploading the photo instead of waiting for them to push the button. But they still had the button there, so it seemed like, oh my gosh, the time from when I clicked the button was amazing. So I think it was a combination of good technical infrastructure, compression, and this little hack that let them do it faster. There's one other little thing, too, that it's not as big a deal is, do you remember the aspect ratio of the photos on Instagram? They were square. Because in the old days, sometimes you take your photo like this, sometimes you take it like this, then you post it, and Steven's face is all small and you can't see it. But when you do square, you don't have to worry about that, right? Let's go and take those comments that we said and put it into the product strategy grid, right? So here we have other photo sharing apps, Instagram, must-haves. We didn't say this. Obviously, let me share my photos is a must-have that they all have to do. Performance benefit, post my photos quickly. Like literally if you took a stopwatch and said, how long does it take for Instagram? How long does it take with the other one? That's a performance benefit where they said, you know what, we're going to be the best. And then the delighter, exactly as you said, make my photos look good. And I think there were 2 things, mainly the filters that contributed to it. But if you think about it, forcing people for square photos so that the aspect ratio always worked out was also there. So that's a simple way of showing what, I don't know that they ever created this at Instagram, but this is kind of reverse engineering, kind of in my mind, what their product strategy was. Let's talk about one more example. I love it. I love using real-world examples when the company shares their information. Recently, it was the 10th anniversary of Uber getting their funding. And so one of their co-founders decided to post their first pitch deck, which is really cool. It's actually a pretty long deck. I use also Airbnb's initial pitch deck, which is only 6 slides. They follow the traditional pattern. Uber's got tons of slides. But luckily, there's one slide that lets me extract what I want to do to have this discussion with you guys. So it was actually used to be called Uber Cab. And it was focused on high-end Mercedes-Benz black cars. They had don't worry, they had BlackBerry. All you BlackBerry users, we got you covered. We're good. That's how old this was back in the day, right? So it's called Uber Cab. They obviously dropped the cab over time, and it was a next-generation car service. The one slide that I focused on was this slide, which has an amazing title, User Benefits, right? So I was like, cool. And let's just do this together. Let's do through the exercise. Step 1, who are the competitors from their slide? Cabs. Car services, just 2, cabs and car services, super easy. We got the columns we need for our grid, cabs and car services, right? And what are all the customer problems or benefits that they call out? Safe, yeah. Cost, fast. There's a lot of words that they have in here, right? So they have that. And then what they do is they then summarize in the next section. They summarize. They say faster, cheaper, nicer, safer. Sounds like a cool tagline, faster, cheaper, nicer, safer. Right? That's like, so you can imagine people walk around the company going, we're going to be faster, cheaper, nicer, safer. Like, that's a good summary of kind of how we're going to outperform the competition, right? So they've laid out everything we need to do to create their product strategy grid, right? So let's do that real quick. So again, they said, what I did is they said faster, cheaper, nicer, safer. I want to put it in problem speak. Let me quickly get a ride, save me money, give me a nice experience, make me feel safe, right? Those are the 4 things that they are stating, right? Next thing, let's put our competitors up there, taxi, car services, and us. And then we can go through and rate taxis and car services, right? So taxis, car service you have to call in advance. It's low. Taxis, you can kind of call one. Maybe you can hail one. That can vary a lot. Obviously, in New York, it's probably high. It's easy to get one. But in San Francisco, it's low. I can tell you that. Save me money. Obviously, taxis are cheaper than limos. Nice experience. Obviously, some taxis are fine, but the car services are nice. Make me feel safer. That makes sense? So this is the backdrop. And then what they did basically said, okay, this is where these guys are weak, and each of our competitors is weak in a different area. Here's how we're going to outperform them, right? We're going to basically let people book a ride much more quickly. The interesting thing, if you read the nuances, they didn't say they were going to be cheaper than a cab initially. They said we're going to be cheaper than a limo. Right, so they're trying to give you like limo-level performance with instant booking at a price that's cheaper than a black car, because it really did focus on black cars at first. So they're not doing high. Give me a nicer experience and make me feel safe. So that was basically their product strategy. These things, because those words focused on outperforming their performance benefits or features, right? If we pull it in the fuller grid, we throw in the must-haves. Obviously, take me where we want to go is a must-have. There's the performance section we just had. And I think there are some delighters, right? I think I was thinking about it, the fact that you can book without having to call someone is a delighter, right? Before that, you literally had to either hail a cab or call someone and say, hey, can I get a cab or can I get a limo? Now you can just do it on your own. The other one I think, which is huge, is I can see where the car is. I have transparency of how long it's going to take, and are they really coming here? What's the guy doing? Where's he going? That kind of stuff. So I think those are some of the delighters, and I'm sure we could flesh out even more. That's an example of it. All right, so in summary, basically, make sure you think about the long term. Don't let the gravitational pull of the short term consume your life, right? Carve out time. Make room for those big rocks. Figure out where your big rocks are that at the end of the quarter, end of the year, you're going to be regretful if you don't address those. I didn't talk too much about it, but obviously that base pyramid is about target market, getting clear on who we're trying to make happy. Think in terms of benefits, not features, right? Problem space, not solution space. Use the Kano model to analyze the competition, looking through the lens of customer benefits to figure out your product strategy. So that you can get really clear on what your unique differentiators are. And again, especially if you're building a V1 product, these are hypotheses, and then you want to test and see how it's going and iterate from there. And happy to take any questions that you guys have.